Start.
Hello, and welcome everyone to this candidate forum. I'm Galen Woolbetter, member of the League of Women Voters of Johnson County, and I will be the moderator for this forum. The League of Women Voters is a volunteer, nonpartisan organization that neither supports nor opposes any party or candidate. The League does take positions after considerable study of issues and acts to influence decision makers on those issues. We work to not only register voters, but also to provide them with information on issues to assist their participation in government. Membership is open to anyone 16 years of age or older. Join us. We can use your time and your talent. League members advocate and inform voters. Democracy works best when more people are involved. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates. All candidates have been invited to participate. The format for this evening is as follows. After candidates have been introduced, they will each have 2 minutes for opening remarks. We will then present questions to them. Our first questions come from League members. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. There will be no time for rebuttals. We are scheduled for 1 hour. Near the end of our scheduled time for this event, each candidate will have 2 minutes for closing remarks. Speaking order will be rotated throughout the forum. A League member, Catherine Kamerick, is our timekeeper tonight, using cards to alert candidates when time is about up and when it is up. The election is scheduled for November 2nd and early voting begins on October 13th. Requests for to vote by mail ballots are currently being accepted by the Johnson County Auditor's Office. We have 2 candidates running for mayor and 2 candidates running for 2 council seats. Our candidates are Mr. Chris Hoffman, Mr. Mike Banza, Mr. Eric Siddick, and Mr. Brian Watson. Let's begin with your 2-minute opening statements, starting with our 2 candidates for mayor. Mr. Chris Hoffman, will you please go first?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us and participating in this conversation tonight, or watching it at a later time. I'm grateful you're taking the time to learn more about your candidates for mayor and city council. Thank you to the Johnson County League of Women Voters for hosting us tonight and giving voters an opportunity to hear from all of us. We're very lucky to have this platform, and I'm thankful to all of you for taking the time to help inform voters. I want to thank Mike and Brian for being here tonight as well. Running for office is time consuming, and I know how much effort you are all putting into this right now. I'm thankful you've stepped up and offered your services to the city of North Liberty. My wife, Valerie, or Coach Val, and I have lived in North Liberty for 19 years. I've served as one of our city councilors for the past 14 years. We have 2 children, a freshman at Liberty High School and a 5th grader at Christine Grant Elementary School. I'm the vice president of solar sales with North Liberty-based Moxie Solar, and have been with them since almost the beginning. I joined Moxie as the 5th employee nearly 8 years ago and have helped to grow the company to over 350 employees across 26 states. I also volunteer with the North Liberty Optimist Club and Avenue of Flags, as well as the Friends of the Coralville Lake. In my time on council, I've had the honor of working with 4 mayors and 11 different city councilors. Each of them has brought their own passion and abilities to serve North Liberty, and they've taught me a lot about relationships, our community, and where our focus should lie. The one thing I've recognized clearly and most often is that it takes a dedicated team to do the work of making North Liberty the city it is today. As a longtime member of City Council, I'm uniquely qualified to serve as your mayor and help guide City Council and staff in pursuit of our shared visions and goals. I look forward to our discussion tonight and hope I earn your support in being the next mayor of North Liberty.
Thank you. Mr. Banza?
Thank you. I would like to thank
the League of Women Voters of Johnson County for setting up this forum, and everyone who's watching for setting the time aside to watch this video. My name is Mike Banza. I'm a father, a husband, a lawyer, and your humble servant. I am the father of 4 beautiful children and a husband to my lovely wife, Marianne. I've earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Iowa and a Juris Doctor degree from the Cooley Law School at the Western Michigan University. For the last 10 years, I've dedicated my life to public service. I've worked for different nonprofit organizations, and I currently work locally as a lawyer and serve as the executive director of Path of Hope. Path of Hope is a nonprofit organization that I founded with the mission to help low-income families. In the past year alone, we've helped thousands of low-income families with basic needs, such as housing, employment, transportations, etc. I come from an immigrant family, and I was raised by a single mother, and I have 7 other siblings. When my father passed away, my mother was unemployed and struggled to bring food to the table every day. Shortly thereafter, I lost one of my siblings for lack of financial means to seek medical treatment for her illness. That's why I founded Path of Hope. The population of North Liberty is rapidly growing, and our current city government is struggling to keep up. That's why I'm running for mayor. I want to lead the team of hardworking city council members and city staff to solve the issues that our city is currently facing. I look forward to listening to your concerns and suggestions on ways to better serve the city. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will hear opening statements from one of our city council candidates. Mr. Siddick had a conflict and is unable to be here this evening. Mr. Watson, please.
Hi, my name is Brian Wason, and I'm for North Liberty City Council. My wife Sheila and I have lived in North Liberty for about 31 years now, and it's been a great place to live. We've raised 3 children, all of who have graduated from the Clear Creek Amana School District, and both Sheila and I work at the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics. When we moved to North Liberty, it was a much smaller place, about 3,000 residents, and I've witnessed a tremendous growth over the years, and now we're over 20,000 residents. There were some growing pains, and that's when I became much more active in civic affairs. I've had the privilege of being a member of the North Liberty City Council for 8 years previously, and again for almost the last 2 years. But some of the issues that I feel are currently very important include distributing ARPA money that the city has received. COVID has hurt many people in several ways, and not just medically, where I normally work with them. Using the money to help deal with the effects of the pandemic will help people recover. Been working to promote and celebrate diversity in our residents, and that's an ongoing process. I feel we need to continue to diversify the tax base to help keep our property taxes low, as well as provide more positions for employment within the city. I also would like to work on affordable housing because that's a way to attract more residents to town and encourage economic development. I'd like to work on expanding a more flexible transit program. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event tonight and the City of North Liberty for broadcasting the event and giving me the opportunity to introduce myself to the voters. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now proceed to questions. Recall that you have 1 minute to respond to each question. The first question being from the League: what motivated you to run for City Council? And we will start with Mr. Banza.
Thank you. As I mentioned, the government of our city is struggling to keep up with the growth. North Liberty is the second fastest growing city in Iowa, but we currently continue to depend on services from nearby cities. Our city has neither a city transit service nor an ADA paratransit service in town. Our streets and parks department is short-staffed and does not have enough snow trucks and street sweepers. And even more surprising, a fire department does not have a truck with a ladder that would reach the top of tall buildings like Green States Credit Union. At this very moment, if there is a fire, we will have an issue. And I saw that and I realized that my presence was necessary on council, and I decided to run to fix these issues.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Wason, the same question.
I started initially on running for city council because there was some things that I also thought were not going well. It was actually related to how some of the growth was going on, and things were not well regulated. But actually, over the last several years, the city has actually done a pretty good job. And I know that the staff has done a very good job of trying to help manage this growth. We've expanded our departments as they've needed to grow. They've been very good about being very cost conscious and doing as much as possible with the least amount of resources. We have continued to expand our police department as the city has grown. We've also expanded the fire department and increased the number of staff and to decrease this time that they've taken to get out to calls. And I'd like to continue to work with that because I think we've been making tremendous progress. And there's several projects, including Centennial Park, that I really like to see to get done. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you. Your question was, what motivated me to run for mayor of North Liberty? And I think it falls back to the 14 years that I've been running or I've been a part of the city council. And along the way, I've had a chance to work with some very talented city staff, as well as compassionate and motivated city councilors and mayors along the way. The work that I started doing at the end of 2007 with the city, it was almost as what Mike described. It was difficult. We were behind on a lot of the things that we needed to do to stay ahead. I'd say since about 2012, though, we've had all of those things under control. We've invested in our parks. Every one of our city buildings has been updated, renovated, or is new over that period of time. The budget, extremely well managed, so much so that the city has attained the AA2 bond rating, which is one of the highest in the state. It's actually 10th highest in the state, tied for 10th out of 900 cities. So I'm really proud to serve on this council and look forward to being the mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, the next question. How would you foster a positive working relationship with other council members to ensure that community concerns are being met? And this time we'll start with Mr. Wason.
So I work in a complex environment, and I'm used to working with people all the time in different disciplines with different ideas, all working towards the same goal. I've really prided myself on council to really work to develop a consensus to reach a problem or solve a problem that everybody feels is the best that we can come up with. And I really like to continue that idea and work with the councilors. We have different opinions, and that's to be expected. And that's what actually makes things interesting and makes things a much more creative process. And I will continue to do that. And I've tried to be very open with everybody and also let them know what I think. And then I try to listen very respectfully and then try to integrate everyone's ideas in a solution.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman, same question.
As mayor, I think the relationship that you'll have with council is unique, and it's also a relationship that you'll have with staff. You're the face of the city for your residents and for your businesses as well. Luckily, I've had the pleasure of working with Brian and Rakisha and Brent as a unit here over the last 2 years. And those relationships for me are not relationships that I'll have to start anew. It'll also be the same with city staff. What's been great about these conversations, as Brian mentioned, is the participation of the mayor can be helpful. And I've had opportunities to work with mayors who are part of that conversation. And having been on council, I think that'll be a natural discussion for me to jump into. However, I don't get to vote anymore. So being part of that discussion and leading that group or being part of the outcome will be helpful. And I'm going to be able to bring that to the table in a very unique way.
Thank you. Mr. Banza.
14 years on council is a very long time. And I understand that Mr. Chris Hoffman has been on council for 14 years. But the issues that we're facing today date from 10 years ago. We still have the same issues. And I think that if that has not been able to be resolved, it's probably because there's an issue. There is a need for a new person to come in with new ideas to solve these problems. I will work with them with the experience to tell me what they have experienced and what they have seen as barriers to solving these problems so that I can build on that and bring my new ideas to solve any issues that we're currently facing, especially staffing us fire departments and city departments, adding more storage to the city, the water department and street parks departments so they can have enough space for trucks and the equipment. And I want to make sure that everyone in the city is feeling welcome and that there's no inequality or inequity in any way among the residents of our city. I can only do that by cooperation with everyone on council.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is from an audience member that was submitted on the chat. The question is, do you support the ICR regionalism efforts? And what is North Liberty's role in those? And this time we will start with Mr. Hoffman.
I do support ICR's role in the regionalism of our communities from north to south. It kind of goes back to the last question we just had about relationships, and not just in council here, but also with those communities that surround us. I have a pretty good feeling of a relationship with members of the council here locally in Johnson County. I know most of them and have had some pretty good conversations with them. I sit on the Metropolitan Planning Organization for Johnson County as a member of the North Liberty City Council as well. And I do know that we're part of the ECI COG. So those relationships and conversations are happening already. They just may not be happening out in front of all of us right now. I'm certainly there to support those conversations and would welcome an opportunity to have a broader discussion as a region.
Thank you. Mr. Banza.
Thank you. I look forward to working with every leader in the neighboring cities. I do think that the collaboration that existed up to this point has worked, and in some ways, such as, you know, we have Coralville City Transit that goes through North Liberty twice a day, and I think that has been, for the most part, helping some who leave in the morning and come back at night. But I also think that the city should become independent of those city services so that we can be the first in line whenever there's a need in the city. We don't necessarily have to continue to rely on services from Coralville and Iowa City to serve our residents. I will continue to work with them, and I value the relationship that we currently have, but I absolutely think that it's time for us to take a step forward and become independent and have our own services for our residents so that we can be the first in line and have #1 priorities for the services that our city residents need.
Thank you. Mr. Wason.
So I think that as economic development is moving forward in the area, we cannot just try and make things, this is how North Liberty is going to be, or that's how Coralville is going to be, or Iowa City, or Cedar Rapids. You know, we have to take a more integrated approach to this area. There's clearly differences in the different constituents, and each has its own identity, but there is an overall area where we can cooperate and work together, because that's going to benefit from everybody. Depending on, if you recruit businesses to one city, it's going to have a downstream effect on another city. So trying to promote a more regional approach so that we're not duplicating efforts, trying to attract people, is going to be very helpful in the long run, and be more helpful in the greater overall development of the corridor.
Thank you. The next question is from the league again. We welcome any more questions from the audience if they want to put them in chat. But here's the next question from the league. The city of North Liberty has allocated just over $2.9 million in federal funds provided by the American Rescue Plan. What criteria would you suggest to use in deciding how to spend this money? How do you feel we can best help our community recover from the effects of COVID-19? And this time we will start with Mr. Banza.
Thank you for the question. I think the city can use that money to serve the people who have not received stimulus checks from the government, because those people either they were not eligible due to their immigration status, or perhaps they have a certain background that didn't allow them to get the benefit from these funds. I also think that we can use this money to think about having a free clinic in the city of North Liberty. We only have a clinic in Iowa City and Cedar Rapids, and us residents have to travel all the way to Iowa City or Cedar Rapids for services. If we can find a way to get some practitioners into the city to use the Renshaw House that we just recently remodeled to have a clinician come in and provide medical assistance for free to our residents with that money, I think that would be the best way of use of the fund, and also providing additional funding to non-profit organizations that are helping meet the needs of our residents. And I think that's all I have to say on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wason.
Some of the money we've already had available, and it would be my preference to begin to use that rapidly. And I would prefer to funnel it into agencies that are already working with folks who have been impacted by COVID, such as the food pantry and the crisis center and the shelter house. They already know what their needs are. They know who the people who need help are, and they just need some financial assistance. And that's something we can do relatively quickly. There's other agencies and groups that will probably have good ideas, and I think that letting them come forward and presenting what they think is a good idea and seeing what we can do to fund that would be very helpful. And I think we have an opportunity to use some money to maybe possibly impact some of our housing issues. And as a way that the law is written, there's some infrastructure uses that are allowed, which may be helpful to promote some affordable housing in town, and we'll have to see if we can work with that.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you. I'm going to split my time here on this and try to be as efficient as possible. I want to go back to an issue Mr. Banza has brought up twice. He describes services that we're short on, streets that can't be swept, equipment that can't be stored, and services that we can't provide. And I have to say, I shake my head. I kind of question what he sees out there going on. In my mind, and in all of our council and staff's mind, none of those things actually exist. We do have plenty of space. On the matter of duplicating services here in North Liberty, having a community free medical clinic just here in North Liberty, again, is not a good use of resources here. We have community organizations such as DVIP, Shelter House, our food pantry, for example, that can do a multiple of good simply by being able to be in more than just one community in North Liberty. And that's what those are the agencies that get our funding and why. I understand wanting to have them in-house here, though. As far as the ARPA funds, I'll quickly, or not. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. The next question, how can the North Liberty City Council help to better diversify our neighborhoods and increase affordable housing. And this time we start with Mr. Wason.
I think if you want to increase, the diversity of the people who are living here, you have to make it a good and affordable place where people want to move, and people will move here. And I think that we're known as a growing city. We're in a pretty good location as far as being between Cedar Rapids and Iowa City in relationship to some of the businesses and the University of Iowa. And so we're unique in that respect. Really working to make housing affordable is very difficult because that's been something we've been working for many years, and there's a shortage of housing. And one of the ways to improve the affordability of housing is to make sure you do things to keep it as low as possible, which is keeping your taxes down, keeping development costs down for builders, and then working to make sure we have enough amenities that people want to move here for, such as good parks and roads and ways to get in and out and get to work. And thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman.
I think one of the best ways that we can provide diversity in our community is something that we've consciously been trying to do for about the last 10 years or so, and that's by creating inclusive development. 15, 20 years ago, development would come online with all single family homes that would all be, available with a good sized yard. But what they didn't do is they didn't provide a lot of economic diversity in those neighborhoods. So we've been on purpose trying to develop neighborhoods over the past 10 years that have a mix of homes that are single family home, sometimes duplex, townhomes, or higher density in the same development. And when you can do that, you bring a lot of economic diversity, cultural diversity, and more inclusion into the city. We also listen to and work closely with developers on ideas that they have for what they believe will be of benefit on the market, but also to our residents. And we've made adjustments over the years, for example, along Penn Street to turn what was commercial into commercial and residential zoning, for example.
Thank you. Mr. Bonza.
Thank you. First, I would like to expand the housing rehabilitation program that we have to include all people who live in apartments to actually apply for this grant. If you don't know, the city of North Liberty provides about up to $25,000 grants to homeowners who want to make improvement in their homes. But if you don't own an apartment or a home in the city, you're not eligible for that money. My question is why? Low-income families will be the ones not to apply because they don't have a home. They live in apartments. I'm going to expand that. And I want to make sure that the city will have a transitional housing for people who come from outside of the city, who come to live in our city to stay within a certain period of time for them to be able to afford their own apartment. They can stay there for 3-4 months and then they move out or go elsewhere. We can also help out, work with landlords and perhaps provide subsidies to them for low-income families who cannot afford their rent so they can be more attainable that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We are not to include rebuttals in your remarks. You might have a chance at the closing remarks at the end of the forum to bring out rebuttals. Okay, next question. What specific actions would you recommend to address social or racial inequalities in North Liberty? And this time we start with Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you. I think some of the things that we have been doing currently are new to the city. For example, in just a few weeks, we're going to welcome our first outreach and equity coordinator in the city. That person will be housed in the community center and working closely with our communications department. Since May 25th of 2020, the spotlight has been on social justice, racial justice, and we've spent a lot of time listening to our community and communicating with them and understanding that communication with our community is the #1 priority. We have a website, the city's website, that is in 4 languages. We've developed neighborhood ambassadors recently to communicate within their own neighborhoods. They're all unique, and they're going to have different perspectives and different questions that they might not otherwise ask at a city level. We also have the way to promote diversity internally at staff by bringing in a diversity, equity, inclusion toolkit as part of our hiring process.
Thank you. Mr. Banza.
Thank you. I want to say kudos to the police chief. I think she has done a great job making sure that the police officers are trained and that the police reform has taken place after the situation that took place in Minnesota for George Floyd. I want to make sure that it continues that way, that everyone in the city has a place that they can call home. The safety of our residents is our number one priority. So we will make sure that I will foster a trustworthy relationship between the police department and the people of North Liberty, despite of their skin color. And I will make sure that our city departments, city governments, and services is more diverse, so to include people from different background, ethnic background, to work in the city so everybody can feel welcome. I will promote fairness and inclusion in our city services and administration to ensure that everybody is feeling welcome in the city. Not long ago, there was a complaint about a man who.
I'm sorry. Your time is up, and we will go on to Mr. Wason.
I think one of the things just at a council level that we can do is just tell people this is what North Liberty stands for, and this is the way we're operating, and making sure that we understand that, and then people know it. And we've been working on those things over the last year, at the city level with the staff who's undergone training. We've worked very hard to provide more information for people to make sure that they understand how things are done and to make sure that they know who to call if they think there's an issue. We are hiring an outreach coordinator just for the specific purpose of providing an additional point of contact and also to promote city programs. We've also added the neighborhood ambassador program to try and bring the city to a more neighborhood type level so that people know what's going on more easily, and that'll be helpful in getting everybody in touch with each other.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, our next question, which was kind of touched on by some of you in the last one, but we'll go ahead with it because you hopefully maybe have ideas to expand. The question is, what are your thoughts about police reform in the city of North Liberty? And we start this with Mr. Banza.
Thank you. I was simply saying that the city has done, I would say, has made an effort to ensure that the police officers are trained and that they are avoiding any incident like George Floyd incident in Minnesota. I believe in February of this year, there was a gunman apprehended in the city, and that ended very well. And they took him into custody. There was no one wounded. So that's a kudo. That's perfect. I just want to make sure that these trainings continue to happen so that everyone in the city feels welcome, such as in the most recent situation where a person came to complain that the police officer was enforcing laws to him, but not to the other neighbors because of the situation that they experienced at that time. I want to make sure that that ends and that everyone feel that the police is working for them and with them. And that's my goal on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Wason.
Several years ago, I was on the city council and we interviewed several people for the chief of police position. And everyone was qualified to be the chief of police, but the one that was picked, which is the current chief, was the one that wanted to be the chief of police of North Liberty. She clearly was committed to being a very professional person and making sure her officers were very professional. She's made sure they've had continued training in how to recognize how they perceive things and how residents will perceive their actions. They work very hard on those things. We spend a great deal of time training them. And it's very clear from the city council that the expectation is our police officers work very hard to treat all the city residents with respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman.
To pick up a little bit on what Brian just said, Chief Eniga in our police department has been incredibly responsive to the questions and the ideas that have come up over the last 18 months. They quickly produced for us, for our community, a report that was the Social Justice Racial Equity Report in August of last year. And in that report, they've outlined ways in which they're going to pick up tracking, update, and work with the vendors, for example, on how they track interactions with our public. It is something that they will report out to us annually. And working with St. Ambrose University, relationships with the NAACP, those relationships that the chief has had and will continue to build upon will be of tremendous benefit to us here in the years to come. There are a lot of things in that report, and I would encourage folks to take a look at it. There are more items than what could be mentioned on here. Lastly, I think the part of community policing has been a tremendous benefit for the city.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, then the next question. How can intergovernmental cooperation throughout Johnson County be increased? And this time we start with Mr. Wason.
The city governments try to get together periodically to discuss areas of where they interact. On a smaller level, the cities we kind of are contiguous with in Tiffin and Coralville, we have pretty good relations with them. Each city has its own issues and things that it needs to work on. But from a greater perspective, there's things we can work on, such as the Access Center, which I think so far has been moving pretty smoothly along. And that was a joint effort between the cities in the county and the county. And those type of projects, as they come up, need to be looked at and then determine, how we want to participate in. And just having those lines of conversation, which often starts at the mayor level, is very helpful.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman.
Yeah, those conversations that happen between the entities in the county are critical to the foundation of our communication and our relationships to solve other issues. Specifically, Coralville and Tiffin as our boundary neighbors. Those relationships that we have with those cities are the most important for us. You might not know this, but we send some of our waste product to other cities, one of those two, and they send some of it to us, just because of the way geography works and topography works. So we need to be able to, and we have those relationships to make sense in those ways. We're strong partners when it comes to businesses that may want to leave one entity in the county and move to another one. That was really a tough thing about 10 years ago. Since then, though, Iowa City, Coralville, North Liberty have joined together and provided a way that, say, a business can't take advantage of a credit in another city without first getting it signed off on the city that they left. So relationships in our communities are really helpful in that way.
Thank you. Mr. Banza.
Thank you. I think the relationship that exists now should continue. And I think that a person who has the ability to listen to the residents and bring those issues to the coalition is necessary. And that person should be the mayor. Here's why. I think the government should work for the people. And it's basically when you spend the time listening to what the residents of your city need, that you can bring that to the management or the coalition that exists between the cities and find ways to solve the issues that exist not only within your city, but also in the surrounding cities. And I think that being the mayor, a mayor has a big role to play on that. And if the mayor spends more time in the community and also serves in those commissions, it will be a great benefit not only for the city of North Liberty, but also for everybody else in the county. So I value that relationship, and I think it should keep going.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question, a new subject we haven't touched on. How do you see the city of North Liberty addressing today's environmental and climate change challenges? And this time we do start with Mr. Hoffman.
Galen, you teed that up for me. I work in the renewable energy industry. I really appreciate this rotation. It's helpful sometimes. We've had solar energy on 3 locations in the city of North Liberty for about 5 years now. Once upon a time, we also had an energy efficiency committee at the city level that I don't know how active they are, but it is one of the first things that I'm going to reenact so that we bring the utilities, our residents, our businesses, and the city all together at the table to understand how we can be more efficient, not just with our electricity, but with our water usage, how we can be a better servant for our financial, the impact that we'll have on the tax rate. All of those things are related. It's a sense of community and community development that comes from being good stewards of resources. So this is an area that I think in the first 30 days, I will bring that committee back together.
Thank you. Mr. Banza.
Climate change is something that should definitely be addressed in the city. I think that with the way we handle our waste and the way that the system is currently set up, where with the garbage pickup and the recycling system, I think it's already helping tremendously deal with the climate change issues that we may be facing in the years to come. I also think that I will work with. It's best to work with the city commissions who work directly with in these departments to find ways to best address the climate change situation. I think this can be done by listening to what's going on in the city and also listening to what the city boards and commissions have to offer as reports, and then come up with resolutions that can best serve the city.
Thank you. Mr. Wason.
So actually, the city has been working on energy reduction to decrease our carbon footprint for quite a while. We've replaced the lights in the rec center, and early on, when we got a credit, we replaced some of them in some of the other buildings early on. We've added solar to the fire department and at the city main shops to help decrease the amount of electricity that we need to have generated for us. Our water and wastewater treatment plants are really state of the art and help decrease the amount of pollution that's put back into the environment. And our recycling program is really pretty good, and actually better than a lot of folks, I would say, because the Johnson County Refuge is really committed to helping with that. And then the other thing we do is North Liberty is a tree city. We've been tree city for many years, and that's where I started, was on the Tree and Stormwater Advisory Board. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we are now going to have our final question, and then after that, we'll have closing remarks. The final question is, what is one issue we have not discussed this evening that you think is important for North Liberty? And this time we will start with Mr. Banza.
And I only get a 1 minute. With
Yeah,
that,
this is 1 minute. This isn't the closing remarks, you get 2 minutes. This is still an answer to the question. And I can repeat it if you want me to.
Please, just because I spent
Yeah.
a few minutes asking a question.
What is one issue we have not discussed this evening that you think is important for North Liberty?
I really think that the city tax money should be spent in a way that gets the greatest value out of the services and infrastructure that our residents depend on. I do think that the city should provide more funding to certain services that are currently facing challenges. I think that one of the most important issue to bring up to the table is the fire station situation. That needs to be addressed immediately. And I think that we don't have a staff who can spend the night there 24/7 to deal with emergencies. We have to rely on other services from different cities. And I think that needs to be addressed immediately. And my hope is that as a mayor, I will make that a #1 priority. We'll have 2 fire stations in the city that can serve both the east side and the west side of the city so that people can be attended to whenever they feel the need to have a person for rescue. And I think that that's going to be one of the issues to address.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Wason.
I think one of the interesting things that I've seen over my years of North Liberty is, North Liberty used to be a little place where people went to, and that's where they lived, and they went everywhere else. And over the time, the North Liberty has gotten bigger, and we've had a lot of problems with the growth, but we've really managed a lot of those. And I think that really the exciting time is that we are known to be a great place to live. People are wanting to move here. Businesses are wanting to come here. So I think that's the interesting thing. And I think we need to really start thinking, hey, we are somebody, and we really need to step up to the plate and work, and show people what we can do.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman.
I'm glad I got to go last on this question. There was a lot of thinking involved. Mike, thanks for stalling that out as long as you could in the beginning. I think we've probably touched on a lot of the topics that I would find important, but I'll go back to a couple of them in that we are a big entity. We're very close to being the second largest city in Johnson County, and I really thought we'd get there with the 2020 census. I'm rooting for a mid-decade census to pull that off. Transportation has always been, continues to be something that we study here. We adapt, we make changes to it to best serve our community. And the goals and the ways that we help our community, they evolve and they change. And the person or the persons that comprise city government on your behalf need to be as responsive and adaptive to what's actually going on out there. Transit is something that I think you'll hear a lot more about here in the months to come. We also just need to make sure that we keep good handle on our budget. There's a reason why we do certain things, reason why we don't do some things. But at the end of the day, we have to be able to pay the bills and borrow the money cheaply.
Thank you. Thank you. Now it's time for the closing statements. These are 2 minutes each. Each candidate has 2 minutes. Okay. And we're going to begin with the candidate we have here for council, Mr. Wason. Will you please give your closing statement?
Thank you. Much of my earlier time on the council, as I've said, was spent managing infrastructure problems, which were necessitated by the rapid growth. And some of that included the road improvements and water and wastewater treatment plant upgrades. But now many of these issues have really been resolved for the time being, but they're always going to require attention to make sure that the population growth does not exceed the capacity of the city services. I'm really proud now that businesses are seeking out North Liberty as a place to grow, and it will continue to support efforts to bring jobs to the community. The city's been focusing on how to better celebrate the diversity of all that live here, but events over the last year have shown that there's much to be done, including taking a really hard look at some systemic issues that may be impacting the ability of our residents to reach their full potential. As the city has grown, I'm pleased to note that North Liberty is playing a bigger role in how the creative corridor is developing. I feel that I have the experience and I'm motivated to help North Liberty move into the future and continually become an even greater place to live. So I promise that it will continue to work very hard for the city of North Liberty. I'd really appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will hear from the candidates for the mayor of North Liberty. Mr. Banza, I'm sorry, you are first.
Thank you. Before I begin, I get to my closing statement. I want to say that Mayor Amy Nilsson, actually, State Representative Amy Nilsson, when she was the mayor, she incorporated the city transit that was operational, and this current government killed that program. The reason is still unknown, but we're gonna find out soon. I'm gonna restore that city transit, and I'm gonna follow the path that Amy Nielsen set out in the beginning of this city when she was a mayor. The main duty of the city government is to serve its residents by listening, understanding, and meeting their needs. This is exactly what I've been doing in the last 10 years. I've listened to the needs of residents, and I've founded a nonprofit organization to meet those needs. In addition to being a lawyer, I have dedicated the last 10 years of my life to public service. I've worked for different nonprofit organizations like I See Compassion, Catholic Charities, and I now work and serve as the executive director of Path of Hope, a nonprofit organization that I founded with the mission to help low-income families. In the past year alone, I've helped a lot of people with their basic needs. I think that through my work and the community involvement, I have personally seen the struggles of our residents, and I am grateful to say that I know the needs of our residents and the issues that the city has been facing for the last years. I'm the only mayoral candidate with the skills to lead the team of hardworking city council members and the city staff to solve these issues that our current government has been unable to address. I'm counting on your support and your vote. And I'm only asking for 4 years, not 14, 4 years to bring you to the changes that you seek. Thank you, and God bless you, and God bless our city.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman, your closing remarks, please.
Thank you. Thanks again to the Johnson County League of Women Voters for hosting this forum tonight. I appreciate the time that you all put in doing this for our community. Mike and Brian, thank you also for being here tonight. I know that we're all going to benefit by having involved in civic-minded representation, and I'm thankful for each of your time. To those of you that are watching now or at a later time, I want to thank you as well. It's because of you and your comments and your support that we will be able to do our best work for North Liberty. We discussed a lot of topics tonight, and many of them likely stem from the incredible growth that our community continues to experience. Tax rates, roads, bike paths, parks, water and sewer lines, our schools, our businesses are all important elements and outcomes of this growth. As a council and staff, we've managed this growth extremely well over the past 10 years. It's the fundamental and foundational work we do as a city. I call it the blocking and tackling of city government. And I have no doubt we will continue our growth, and we will also continue to succeed in delivering services efficiently and effectively to you and our community. If you've watched or participated in city council discussions over the past 14 years, I think you'll agree that I've been a consistent, reliable, thoughtful, and dedicated member of your city council. And as your mayor, I'll continue to provide consistent and thoughtful leadership to your city council, and at the same time work to achieve greater equity and inclusion throughout our community. The challenge we'll face are certainly unknown, but I know we will be able to meet them with our shared commitments to each other and our community. Our ability to connect and learn and grow together will ensure that we succeed in the years to come. I hope you'll continue to find value in my service as your mayor, and it's been an honor and pleasure to have served for you all of these years, and I look forward to continuing to do so. Thank you again for your time and consideration. I look forward to continuing my service on your behalf as your next mayor of North Liberty.
Thank you. Thank you to all the candidates, the City of North Liberty TV television staff. The recording of this forum will be available on the Facebook page of the League of Women Voters of Johnson County or on the website of the League of Women Voters of Johnson County, which is lwvjc.org. It will also be broadcast on NLTV. Check their website for scheduling. We would like to remind you that the views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates, and the sponsorship of this forum is not an endorsement of any candidate. The election will be held on November 2nd. Please vote. Remember to visit vote411.org for more election information. Thank you.